So, my name is Michael Stoop. I've been in estate agency since September 1976. I almost happened upon the job by error. I was at a loss of what to do as a young lad based in London and made a call to a connection of mine who was based at Winkworth at the time. And one interview later, I was offered a job as a junior negotiator for the Winkworth office in Knightsbridge. I had a wonderful boss by the name of Toby Chumley, and he basically gave me a telephone and an applicant box in those days, which is basically how we lived our lives. And as new houses came onto the market, you were just told to ring round certain sections of your applicant box and get some viewings at the house. This was a great way of life in those days, and I was absolutely loved what I was doing. I couldn't have wished for a better job. In those days, we were in an unregulated industry, and it was a very social industry. Cooperation between agents was incredibly relaxed, almost to the extent that if you didn't have a house on your own books that might suit a potential client of yours, you would wander down to another agent's office and have a look in their filing cabinets and see what other properties might be on the market that agent could offer you on a half-commission basis. Again, in those days, your word was your bond. We all trusted each other implicitly, and actually it seemed to work. My office in Winkworth was opposite a garage called Motor Tune in those days, which sold Porsches, Alfa Romeos, and any car you like to mention. And it gave me a goal in life, I suppose, and maybe that's why agents in the 70s and 80s got a bad name. But I said I wanted to own a Porsche one day, and I was going to work hard enough to try and earn that Porsche. So we worked incredibly hard, long hours, and hours really didn't seem to actually configure much in our lives in those days. We were in the office at 8:30, and we left the office when the day was finished. We worked on Saturdays, probably up until lunchtime. And I think we gave a great service. It was a very personal service. I, for one, loved getting into a car and showing clients around properties. And, of course, working in the Knightsbridge, Belgravia, Kensington area, which was our patch then, made for some fantastically interesting houses and also some wonderfully interesting people, from rock stars to Chelsea footballers. So without showing off, I sold a lot of houses. And as I said earlier, I loved what I was doing and really didn't look at it much as a job, almost more of a hobby. It exposed me to a fantastic set of people in London, and I felt it was a real progression type of job. So having done 2 successful years in the Winkworth Knightsbridge office, I was then asked to go down, at a great surprise, to open the Winkworth office in Parsons Green. And without boring you too much, we applied the same principles as I'd been taught back up in the Knightsbridge office, and very soon we had a very successful Parsons Green office, which again was a great place to work in. At this point in time, Winkworth decided to go down the franchise route, and myself and Simon Eggers, who was the chairman at the time and still is of Winkworth, went over to America and learnt about franchising and how best to launch it back in the UK. In those days, the American system was obviously and still is, was very different to the UK system. But we came back from the States, from a boot camp in Phoenix, and put a plan together back in 1980. And luckily, I was offered the first franchise almost as a guinea pig in Parsons Green. And in 1981, I opened or became the first franchisee of Winkworth in Parsons Green. And again, it was a fabulous time, having your own business at that sort of age. I was still in my mid-20s. I was living out my dream, putting in place systems that were second nature to me, employing good staff, and one thing I was always taught was make sure you have better quality staff than yourself around you, and you'll have a more successful business. The estate agency was always fun, even when I started in the mid-70s and into the 80s. It was a hell of a good time to be in the business. There was lots going on, London was alive, and to be frank, we felt the king of the castle. In 1981, I met my wife, who at the time was working at Aylesford's, and we got married in 1982, and the Fulham office continued to prosper. And I was about to fulfil my dream of owning that car. And in 1983, I put my order in for my Porsche. But I must stress, I didn't drive around to appointments in the Porsche. It was purely kept in a garage that I had down in Fulham. But as I say, it was one dream fulfilled. So time went on. I opened a second office in Chiswick and a third office in Hammersmith. And then in 1987, I saw firsthand how quickly a market can turn. We had the stock market crash in 87, the abolition of the double tax relief on mortgages, and slowly but surely this had a devastating impact on the property market. To give you some idea, in 1988, the volume of transactions was in excess of 2 million, and we all felt quite a draft. But as we saw in that period, then again in the early 90s, then in 2007, 2008, recessions in the property market can be an opportunity. And if you're good at your job and you've got good staff, you will always gain market share, because whatever happens, there is always a clear out of what I call the not so good agents. And when that happens, that creates an opportunity for those that survive and continue in business. So where am I today? Well, having left Winkworth in 92, I then ran the Legal and General Franchising Network, latterly called Experience, up until 2014, when we were bought out then by the then Martin & Co., which is now the Property Franchise Group. And I bedded in those businesses for a couple of years, and after careful thought and consideration, came out to basically do my own thing. And my own thing now consists of mentoring estate agents, which I do and which I enjoy doing. And even as an old hand, it's quite good to mentor estate agents, especially in today's market, and make sure that they don't forget the fundamentals and the basics of how our businesses run. I've been a director of the Property Ombudsman since 2002, and that was restructured 2 years ago. We now sit on the Property Ombudsman Board as a non-executive, and I also chair the industry forum. After leaving the Property Franchise Group back in 2017, I was approached by Dorian Gonsalves, who is the CEO of Belvoir, who, after due process, appointed me as a non-executive director of Belvoir in 2018, and I was very honoured to become chairman of the Belvoir Group PLC, taking over from Mike Goddard in May 2019. I've recently also been developing a compliance app known as complylex.com, and if anyone's interested, we would be more than happy to trial it for you. Just please email me at michaelstoop@icloud.com. But in the meantime, thank you for listening. I hope you've enjoyed my short but sweet podcast. And remember, if you are good at what you do, you will always survive and prosper. Thank you for listening.